Hi, it's Michelle Turner from Movement Lesson, all about movement podcast. This is actually a presentation that I just did at Charles University on gravitational primitive reflexes. I really hope that you will start to see the benefits of gravity as a stimuli because it's with us from the day we're born to the day we die. The full presentation is available on YouTube, but I really wanted to go on it with just a more personal level. Okay, let's go. Gravitational primitive reflexes. What are they and how do they work on our bodies? Well, this is what I'm about to explain to you. Movement, as you know, I'm movement lesson, but I'm all about gravity. Why? Because we organize in opposition to gravity. We oppose gravity. Just by the way I'm talking with my hands and my hair, it's not getting pulled from my head. Gravity is a very subtle force, but it's the oppositional force that makes us who we are. When we don't have that opposing gravity, we don't have functional movement. We don't have developmental movement. What does that mean? Look at astronauts. As soon as they leave Earth, not or Earth's atmosphere, gravity in a microgravity situation, gravity really doesn't exist. Even on the moon, it doesn't exist. It's not the same. But why is this not the same? Because also there's no rotational responses. What does that mean? From feeding my face to get out of bed in the morning, we need rotation for all functional movements. In outer space, you lose rotation immediately. This is where I believe Einstein was a little bit incorrect when he felt a G-force was enough. And a lot of people are chasing that tail of centrifugal force. I get it on a scale. I might be 150 pounds on Earth and I'm 150 pounds with one G-force, but that is not artificial gravity. Why? Because you still can't have a rotational response. In outer space, you lose all your developmental milestones, but most of all, you lose your reflexes. So let's go on with that. So this covers a lot. Now, in my abstract, it was the establishment and identification of gravitational primitive reflexes in infants. Stay tuned because I'm also going to go over the warning signs and cover this more because I'm doing a huge neuromuscular clinic right now and really putting in, again, a new perspective for understanding early infant development. It's really important. Why do I care where infants came from? Because that's where you're going, right? You'll see developmental milestones happen, but they're a part of us. These are where our movements came from. So when you do rehabilitation or you're working to master a new skill, you really want to go back to the origin of our movements, not copying and patterning and so forth. You have to see where you are organized or the person that you're concerned is organized and against gravity. This is my entire abstract. I'll have the link into it. You can go in to see all my abstracts at Movement Lesson under New Sciences, New Movement Sciences, but I'm not going to read this in its entirety because I really want to go over it with you. Okay, primitive reflex. What is a primitive reflex? Well, a few times I'll read from the screen. An automated response to a particular stimulant through the central nervous system in a subconscious performance of the human body. So in other words, when there's a stimuli, whether it's a loud noise, someone touching you, or just the way that we are performing in gravity, especially we were born, we will respond as an automatic. A lot of people feel that primitive reflexes are a startle reflex, it's there for our survival. That's not really the case. The reflexes are there to combine with gravity, so you're learning how to have a nervous system that can move in and out of position. You really need weight transfer, transitional skills, and rotational responses for functional movement to happen. But we really got to look at gravity and its part. Gravity is a non-optional stimuli. Again, it is with us from the day we're born until the day we die. Gravity exists. It's our go-to force because that's our familiarity and that's our constant. When I pick up this cup, right, that cup is a influence of gravity, how much force, momentum, push-pull milestones, all of these that I need to do. Then I have to go into myself. All those kind of things are around gravity. Again, it's non-optional. Now, for me to pick up that cup, that's an optional force. Whether I want to pull on my hair, that's an optional force or twist it. Gravity is non-optional. We don't have a choice. It's in our tongue movements and our fingernail movements down to all of our body's functions. It is a constant. But when gravity fails us, this is now where you become my client. Gravity is going to fail us when we can't move properly because we don't have, again, the rotation. You need a rotation from a rocket to leave Earth's atmosphere as well as from yourselves. It's really a very generous force of nature and how we're in. So it's our greatest stimuli. It's our constant. It's the way our brain organizes to all of our movements is through gravity. There's not one aspect of human body function, not one, that can really truly happen without gravity. And you're going to say, oh, Michelle, but the astronauts can go to the bathroom in space. Actually, they have to be told to do. They don't even know they have a full bladder. They don't play with gravity or not being in gravity. There should be specific exercises that we practice here at Movement Lesson where the brain can get teased that they're going in and out of gravity. In a sense, that's what I'm doing, let's say, when a child has a cerebral palsy or a stroke. They're having a hard time standing. You can call it all these things. They're having a hard time moving with gravity. That's what standing is, let's say, or sitting down. It doesn't matter. Gravity is still the underlying physics behind movement. We're not linear beings, as people in the space industry like to say we're a bag of bones. That's not the case either. But it's required to cycle throughout our body for optimal physical and cognitive development. This is why, again, astronauts get a space-based autism because of the lack of gravity, the lack of peripheral vision, being able to cross midline, all those things that we so take for granted because it's our greatest function. Gravity's role is to integrate all movements needed for survival and milestone development as a physical and cognitive impact. That's it. It's just that simple. It is to integrate all movements. It's to create development, or development is created out of us opposing gravity. You're going to hang off of a tree, you're going to oppose gravity. If you're going to walk down a hallway, you're going to oppose gravity. That is our impact. That's our organization. It's not recognized, and here will make you understand the role of reflexes, I think, in a much clearer aspect and for development. So most people look at gravity as the apple falling from the tree. In a sense, though, Newton was really describing death, the motion, not movement, of death. When rotation leaves the apple, buoyancy leaves the apple, gravity now becomes a dominant and falls to the ground. That's why not every apple falls to the ground. Right? Just as the human body needs to cycle through movements, right? So does our lifestyle, our that. So now we're getting in from gravity into rotation. So the human body must cycle through various functions and positions to establish our body's relationship to gravity's involvement from breath to locomotion. Now, opposing gravity and breath is probably the most important thing. Why? Because if you can't oppose gravity and breath, that first breath of an infant, or that they have respiratory distress, especially at the first breath, but during the first 3 months of life, if their bodies have not organized opposing gravity and breath correctly, I'm going to tell you then they're going to have problems or needing some kind of therapy to help and walk. Because if they can't oppose gravity in breathing, they're certainly not going to oppose gravity in locomotion. Right? That's where the conflict comes from. So here, what I work with is constantly gravity's impact onto the human body, but also through vision, fine motor skills, reflexes, all of that comes into play, not just single entity, right? Gravity to humans, this is not the pulling force as we respond to it as a stimuli. What does that mean? Well, if I walk down the hallway, I'm not being pulled down. Now, I'm capable of falling, guys. I'm capable of falling just like this apple can fall. I am capable of that fall. I'm not organized to fall, nor should your baby. If your baby's organized to fall, now don't leave a baby alone on the changing table to prove this. But in general, if you feel the fall, the startle, all of those kind of things, the reflexes coming into play and a hyper responsive way, then that means they're deviating from working in and out of gravity to in and out of fall. And what do? We prevent the fall, because once the fall is happening, nothing is strong enough to stop the fall, right? So we create functional movements in opposition to its nature. So all the apples didn't fall off the tree when they're created, but the apple that is dying, in a sense, gravity now becomes a dominant because it loses those aspects of movement. Now, obviously, an apple can't walk down the street. I'm not talking movement that way, but the wind blows and the apples, there's really not much that will take an apple off the tree. It's actually kind of hard to pick an apple if it's not ready to go. But when it's ready to go, gravity now becomes dominant. I don't want to walk down the hallway and say, oh my gosh, be careful, don't fall. But to a person that's capable of falling or organizing or preventing a fall, even off of a chair, I don't worry about falling. But a child with, let's say, cerebral palsy is going to fall, or they think they are. And so they become very hyper responsive. And that's where you come in. So the reflex integration that you're looking for. So again, airplane, pushing that baby into gravity and pushing it away again, and the jumping and all that comes. And optimal infant and child development occurs as the body continues to interact with gravity as a stimuli. Even with me being 60 years old, that statement right there is significant for my aging or anti-aging, however you want to put it, right? Because my interaction with gravity as a stimuli should continue. So, golfing, what am I doing with gravity? And weightlifting and all of those things. I'm a very, very active person. I like playing with gravity. I like having a complex rotational responses. That's what we're after. So the first reflex that we're looking at is a fetal neutral reflex. Sorry. The first reflex that we're looking at for gravitational responses, right, is fetal neutral reflex. What does that mean? In the fetal position, the gravity is not meant to be there. And you're going to say, oh, it is. I know it's there, but let me tell you the trick. During this time, if your child is in the womb, their bodies are expanding in all directions. Their exposure to gravity is in a unique position because they don't have similar pressures, because they don't expand or expel. Breathing, digestion, and elimination do not happen during this period. So in other words, I'm not breathing or expanding. So if I take a deep breath now, I'm breathing against gravity in all directions. Your baby's not breathing. Your baby's not intaking food. They're not eliminating. If those things happen in the womb, it actually can be detrimental or even deadly to the parent, the mother, or to the child. We don't want that to happen. But they're also meant to be in a frictionless environment. So in other words, the body is expanding in all directions at all times. You don't want friction on the brain. You don't want friction on the hands. You want all of these movements, right, are meant to happen. Now, however, why is this important? This is also one of the complications we have in outer space, because now the brain, because there's no gravity or microgravity, is going to expand in all directions. And that's why the Kelly twins are no longer twins. His DNA ripped for that reason. He was going back into a fetal neutral reflex, or feeling like he was back in the womb. So the body grows. We say it's growing because it doesn't have the compression of gravity. That is also an aspect, but the aspect of what it's doing to the human body is huge. They need to set up equipment that an astronaut can daily work in and out, like it's teasing the brain that it's in and out of gravity on a daily basis, right? They cannot go for prolonged periods and come back without doing damage to the body. Even breathing is a complication. So gravity's effect to the human body is an experience of neutral, okay? It doesn't have a good gravity, bad gravity. Again, in amniotic fluid, in a dominance for buoyancy, there's no expansion or elimination in the womb. This creates a lack of force, okay? Forces will happen in the womb, right? But it'll happen in expansion mode as a baby maybe will stretch out or ready to get into position. There's also no rotation going on in the movements of the womb, okay? And reflexes intention is the fetus is not meant to experience friction in the womb. It's just not. So the nuchal cord, anything like that, stroke in utero or arthrogryposis, anything that causes friction in the womb you're going to have a situation where the baby is now processing into developmental delays or global delays because it won't be able, it didn't set up the reflex of gravity being neutral in the womb. Then gravity will have a different response in breath and the absolute horizon. These are other going into. The body needs to expand in all directions without the pull of gravity during 40 weeks. 40 weeks. Taking a baby early and all that, I get it. C-section is there to protect the mother and the baby. I'm not saying don't do a C-section. These are things that have to be looked at and reviewed for that child. Now we're going into the breathing reflex. The gravitational primitive reflexes in breathing is significant. The breath there is because it's a significant it's a first opposition to gravity. Your baby's also coming out of the womb. That's another opposition to gravity. That goes into the next one, the absolute horizon. But for breath to happen, it needs to oppose gravity, which makes sense. That's what it does. It is the organization of the opposition of gravity in breathing that formulates this use of gravity in your newborn's ability to stimulate a neurological synapses of learning from the movements, right? So this is where the breath says, oh, this is what gravity is. This is the force I need, and it goes into it. Now, again, an adult bridges and dentures and so forth has a problem, which would create issues with the way the breath happens. And that's when you're getting into, be careful, don't fall down. Oh, I did fall down. Oh, now I can't go there. We don't want those complications to be happening at the back end either as we age. That breath organization of gravity is really important neurologically. But we're still talking about the breathing reflexes, the forces of the first breath. When a baby comes out in the vaginal canal, the head comes out in an organization called cavitation, very much like a champagne cork, and it knocks the palate strike of the tongue, opens up the foam in the lungs. The foam in the lungs expand and goes against gravity at the same time. That's why you get more of that first breath versus that. So it's quality of breath that's very important also that happens. You're not going to have in a micro preemie that foam set up. There's issues with first breath, all of that because it's not getting the force from within and the force of gravity to lock up the intercostal muscles. The first breath of a newborn takes its powerful act. It's requiring significant effort to overcome the initial resistance of the lungs to expand against them in the force of gravity. The rotation, there's not really a rotational movements in the first breath, but it's the establishment, the interaction of gravity in the, again, with an interior force, right? And the reflex intention is the first breath establishes all organization of gravity in the human body's movement. So this is our go-to. So our go-to matters when we age, how the breathing is, as well as how we're born. Because if your breath is complicated, you're not running a business, right? We're going back to, I gotta maintain gravity. I've got to maintain my life. You and I don't hopefully think about where our breath is coming from, but if your breath is a concern, right, this needs to be worked on, right? I have wonderful breathing courses. They're free for that reason. The breath is very important to me, and it always has been. And that was actually my first courses was breathing courses, one for adults and one for kids, how to work with them. This is a really important reflex going into what I call is the absolute horizon reflex. It's the ability to take your baby from your arms and put them down in the crib and pick them back up again, almost like a plane coming in for a landing, right? It should be neutral. Your baby immediately gets influenced by gravity or from gravity as a constant, non-optional force. As you move your baby from your arms to the crib to a family member, your baby has a neutral response where they are in space. Their absolute horizon will remain a constant throughout their development, really throughout your life as well. Where do you see this breakdown? Let's say with autism, you see the flapping and the stimming. They don't know where they are in space. It's almost like their GPS is off, or like back in the day where you were like had your phone up looking for Wi-Fi. That's what where this, again, a really important reflex. And a lot of people say, oh, my baby hates tummy time. Again, guys, we're having a problem with the beginnings of movement. This needs to be looked at. Complications can be environmental constrictions like the NICU, swaddling might be. And again, don't say swaddling, oh my gosh, Michelle, it's not bad. It calms my baby down. If your baby needs to be swaddled, what's going on. We need to start looking at little warning signs very astutely versus, oh, all babies had that. They were fine. If you didn't do a newborn movement assessment, you don't know if that's okay. Presentation of genetics could be setting in that, or the first signs of cerebral palsy, because cerebral palsy happens with the brain trauma or the oxygen deprivation, but people think that they can get it. No, the cerebral palsy, it's happened. It's to what is your advantage to it. So gravity now uses the body now uses gravity through the endometrius, which is the skin. The skin is very, very important to articulate movements for spatial awareness, right? So the absolute horizon reflex establishes the forces of gravity. Rotation, or the combination of the first breath and the absolute horizon, are needed to make rotational responses. And then the reflex integration, again, the absolute horizon or the lying in space, establishes all forces of gravity in the human movement throughout the body's position. And again, this comes out to astronauts. What is the first thing they get is that they get nauseous, they get sick because the absolute horizon is taken from them. I can't stress enough, when an astronaut goes into outer space, all human development leaves. I get it that they can still walk. I mean, talk. But they can't walk, they can't sit down, they can't lie down. The number one prescribed medication is sleeping pills, because they literally can't lie down and go to sleep. This absolute horizon, this main reflex of all our bodies, if you want ATNR, Moro, and all this is what is needed as your primary, right? And now you're going into your next one, which is coming off the floor. Now, there's a lot more that are integrated into this, but I really wanted to just talk about the primary ones for gravity. What's coming off the floor? Grabbing your feet, right? Your baby needs to respond to gravity by coming off the floor. First, they bring their feet to their hands to their midline, and then they will cross midline, and then they will be able to weight transfer, pump their hands and feet up to reach to an opposite to gravity. Pumping, I mean like this, almost like a cat, with their mom, but they're playing with the toy bar. And it happens around 4.5 months, right? Again, grabbing the feet. Grabbing the feet is probably one of the most significant overlooked milestones. Complications are already milestone delays and rolling over, because rolling over should have happened by now. Environmental constrictions, again, baby container syndrome, presentation of low or high muscle tone, right? These are problems with coming off the floor. It should be a natural progression to opposition of gravity, right? To oppose gravity is by bringing your appendages up. People start playing with you, right? But the gravity, now the body is able to oppose gravity through their extremities to establish midline crossings, or again, crossing the midline or bringing to the midline. So bringing to the midline and crossing midline are two different things. Rotational movements throughout the body are needed to oppose gravity. Again, from your little finger down to your toes. And without those, without the forces of muscle strength. So in other words, a baby here that you're watching can play. And guys, please go, if you're doing this in the podcast, take a moment and watch this in video form too. He's not forcing his legs up, right? I should be able to lie down on the floor and not force my legs up. That kid should be able to just bring them up. I get it, muscles are involved, but muscles don't need to work as hard as people think, especially in babies. The biggest number one thing that comes out of your mouth that you should have concerns for infant development is, my baby needs to try harder, or he's not working hard enough. That's not how it works. They just do it. They just go on and play with themselves. They progress. And when you're like, oh, if he just would try a little harder. Oh, he was working on it yesterday. No, these aren't conversations we have about babies. And it shouldn't be about us too. It shouldn't be work to get out of bed. Oh, I got to get up this morning. I have to go to work. No, no, no. It should be just pleasurable, right? But again, these are really big milestones that, again, astronauts are losing. And the reflex tension that's coming off the floor reflex is done in horizontal play, and gravity is the easiest for physical and cognitive progression. In other words, babies progress going up. It's like an airplane taking off. An airplane just doesn't jump into the sky, right? It has to ease off the runway. This is what grabbing your feet is. It's, I'm coming off the runway. I'm starting to get take. That's why it's so important. Now, coming to the floor reflex, when a baby can turn around and drip his legs down, right? This is around 12 months. Like I said, this isn't with milestone progression. This is big influences on gravity. But a typical child will not go head first down the stairs. An atypical child will. A typical child knows to spin around and start dropping their feet down the stairs, right? They won't crawl down the stairs. They spin around. This is why I don't like a crawling track. They really learn some abnormal behaviors there. And also an incorrect form of gravity. Your baby will start to learn how to come off a higher surface around 12 months of age. Their toes will, now this can happen sooner, I get it, but this is where they are doing it on their own. Their toes will dangle and drip as they look for a new floor or a new level of gravity. It's like my phone is on the table, right? Right now, that's the level of gravity my phone's at. If I suddenly move it off the table, it will fall to the next level of gravity, which might be the floor. A high response child will oppose gravity with stiff legs that go out straight. They don't know to drip their legs down, right? And a low response baby will not look for the floor with the legs. They tend to just hang over the edge and they will fold their legs up in fear of the unknown. So in other words, if you get a baby, it's like, look, whatever I do, he just he folds his legs. He won't bring his legs down because the concept of going from this level of gravity to this level of gravity is not hitting their nervous system. These are really important, right? The milestone delays in crawling, independent standing, presentation of lower high tone are really big about now. The coming to the floor reflex. Again, this is a baby coming down or toddler coming down the slide. It's a really big one. And they go from the slide on. You see the absolute horizon in play there, that they can go to a different level, that the absolute horizon is now matured into a much higher level. Gravity now the body now uses gravity to find a level that is lower than them. Before they want to come up, and now they're going down. Their toes and legs will just let them subtly pull or guide them to the new space. And that's what playing is. That's why kids love the playground, because now they're playing with going up to gravity and going down gravity. We hear the slide, the swings, I get it. They're playing with gravity. If your child's not getting those experiences, or even more so, can't deal with these experiences, these are really key areas in your life where development is going to become impaired. Rotation now needs to be through all optimal milestones and ready to roll into a new position. And the reflex intention is coming off the floor, or coming to the floor, sorry. Reflex integrates now playing with fields for their bodies to move in and out of. Another big thing in like therapeutic process, people want to walk and they go forward. They don't think about walking back. I was watching recently a really good documentary on Aaron Rodgers, who had ACL surgery. He's never going to play right again because of the rehab that they did. And guys, I don't mean to, I'm not here to find disparaging remarks on certain people. People know what they're doing, but in particular, what you're not looking for an ACL, I'm actually going to cover a whole documentary on myself on just ACL recovery. They don't deal with the heel coming, dripping back, that rotational movements. They're all looking for, again, that going forward, going up. You cannot go forward if you can't go backwards. You can't go learn anything if you can't get in and out of standing, you're not walking. The brain needs to know they can get out of the situation, take a step back. If you look at all emotions, they have to do with movement. Stand up for my beliefs, take a step back. But they don't really integrate that as nicely as I would like to see. And so again, what does a quarterback have to do? He has to take a step back to make a pass, right? He doesn't step forward to take a pass. And so all of these things, and that's what throws off their recovery, and they're not as good as they used to be. So now we're getting into the falling reflex, right? The falling reflex is really important because it's like, oh, Michelle, all people fall. Of course they do. Don't leave a baby on, they fall. But a baby is not organized to fall, nor are you. You're capable of falling off a surface, but are not organized to fall. At the same time, you and I will not organize for a life of falling, right? But that's stroke, that's CP, that's Parkinson's. I can go on and on. It doesn't matter what the condition is. Fall now becomes an increase factor, right? Where again, falling can be confused with proprioceptive responses. Again, oh, you're not paying attention to this. But again, to just tumble over, oh, I'm just being clumsy. But for your baby has no need for propping. Around 11 months, the squats to get in and out of standing before falling comes into play for their optimal development. So around 14 months, they're actually going to play with fall. Now, no offense, if I'm playing against a table, I don't want to fall down on my tush. That would hurt, right? They will go past that, but falling is a part of their final successes. They really have to learn the fall issue or reflex, I should say, not an issue, before they go into the gate into running, right? You need to know how to fall down. A very big common practice, let's say for skiing, is the first time you're on skis, what they're going to teach you to do, how to fall down. You need to know how to get out of it, but we don't look at falling down when we're really weightlifting or golfing or those kind of things. And when the falls do happen, we're embarrassed, we're this, but actually a fall needs to be a part of success, not where gravity's starting to fail us. And that's the stress of the body that you're looking for. If you look at this great little munchkin, right, they're just going to go down, but they're going to get back up again. It's not like, oh, I've fallen. And I'm saying fall can hurt, but you brush yourself off of it again. That's a really, to master skills, like to go to Harvard or to the Olympics, you need to learn to just brush it off and get back to it. The body now uses gravity to find a level that is lower than them, their toes, then their legs, and then it lets the subtle pull guide them to a new space. This is different if you watch her again, that she didn't really fall down, but she fell. Rotation now needs to be through the optimal milestones and is ready to roll into a new position. The rolling milestones or the spinning milestone happen from about 2 to 5, are really important. Rolling down a hill, somersaults, swinging, bicycles, and then a cartwheel are really important rolling reflexes or spinning milestones. We're not playing with that anymore. Too much cell phone use. When's the last time you saw a kid on a bike? When is the last time you saw a group of bikes? In my neighborhood, you knew where all the kids were at. That's where all the bikes were at. Hanging from a tree, monkey bars with crossing midline, by the way, not patterning. There's a big difference. Rotation now needs to be through all optimal milestones and ready to roll into a new position. Not ready to transfer, but ready to roll into a new position. And your reflex intention is the coming to the floor reflex integrates new playing fields for the body to move in and out of. Really important, right? Now we're getting into the upside down reflex, right? Around 11 to 12 months old, your baby is now playing with gravity, needing to organize their bum being above their head. It's fun, right? Eventually, this will go into the spinning milestones, but it does need to add into the crawling, coming into standing, but specifically, this is a movement to organize their opposition to gravity. Why? Because when they finally are doing a cartwheel, you're basically integrating gravity in 360 degrees. All of what I'm saying, we could apply to every NFL football team. Just because we're talking about this is the key to infant development, this is the key. All these here are the keys to maximize sports, getting 2 extra years of your sports career, anti-aging, all of these are keys. You can ask a 60-year-old, when's the last time they did upside down? I was in India not too long ago. Maybe it was, but I spent 2 weeks. I said, I'm not going to get out of bed using my feet. I got out of bed like a kid. I got out on my hands. I got of this. I tried all different ways of, in a sense, sliding and crawling out of bed, but not getting up the conventional way, because I still do things to maintain what people would say is my child life experiences. And so this is really important to them. Again, timeline for this is around 16 months and moving and manipulation. And they're like, people say, oh, my baby only wants to go upside down, right? But again, when you can't do it, complications are the absolute horizon, milestone delays in crawling and independent standing, presentation, again, your tones are coming into play. And again, you can see this child here, right? They're using gravity in reverse manipulation. The body now uses gravity in the 3-dimension. Going up and down brings the body and brain into the presence of a full self. This position allows the body to reach for gravity. That's what that child just did. He's reaching from gravity, but he's doing it from all aspects of his body. Rotation now finds a new dimension of upside down and being in a normal and optimal development. So again, lots of times you'll see a child just hanging off their chair. What's for dinner? And you're like, what are you doing? Well, that it's a really important and a very important, significant miss milestone is this. Again, parents that are working and just don't have the time for these play skills, or they just don't realize the significance, right? It's very, very significant to hold a kid by their feet and say, go reach for a toy. Now, that doesn't mean take all kids and hang them upside down. If they didn't go through the stages I just talked about, that's where you have to back it up. And the upside down reflex integrates and transfers vertical and horizontal responses in a combination with momentum and a significant process of invention. All right? It's really, really important.